everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Winning with Insights podcast. My name is Mike. I am the founder of GTM Diagnostics. Today, with me, I have a very awesome guest. His name is Wouter Dieleman. He is the founder of WouterDieleman.com, and he is specialized in ABM, but a very specific niche within ABM. It is the HubSpot ABM. And what that actually means, Wouter is going to tell you all about that. But before we get started, Wouter, maybe you can quickly introduce yourself, like what you've done in the past, so that people get to know you a little bit, and then we're going to jump right into our conversation.
Yes, will do. I'm a HubSpot guy. I've been so for 10 years. I worked at a few SaaS startups in the beginning and then spent 5 years working at the biggest HubSpot partner in the Netherlands. And that's where I learned the craft. I mostly, also back then, especially now, going into my fourth year as a freelancer, work with B2B SaaS companies, helping them get the most out of HubSpot, and specifically companies that have a longer sales cycle, higher deal size, which are suitable for account-based marketing, so the targeted approach. And companies that are on the HubSpot CRM, I help them run ABM the HubSpot way, using also other tech components. And that is also a very concrete question that they usually have. I get that we need to do ABM, but how do we do it in HubSpot? And that is my niche, and that is where I come in.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a very targeted, um, niche, as you already said, like a very well defined market. You can almost like run ABM yourself, basically.
I do
Um,
that. I do that very much. All of my practical examples come from my own ABM motions, my own HubSpot portal, how I run things in Sales Navigator, and clients love that, the nitty gritty of it.
That's really cool. And when we're talking about the B2B and the B2B SaaS who have longer deal cycles and higher AC fees, is there any particular size then to the business, like the amount of people that work there, that you work with the most?
For me, for my own business, it's B2B SaaS scale ups, 50 employees, 5 million in revenue, but it could also be 35 employees and 3.5. Right? Anything north of 30 employees, 3 mil should do it. And for companies that are considering ABM, what is my ideal client look like? That's part of your strategy, but it all comes down to how much can we make on a bigger account, and does that
Mhm.
justify the calculation in terms of ROI? So that's almost always the starting point when you consider ABM.
Yeah. I'm curious because there are many different ways in which you can go to market. Like there are different motions.
Hmm.
And if we are talking about ABM, we're talking about like the account-based marketing. That's how it's called.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, first of all, like how do you define account-based marketing? And then when do you recognize that this is like the right motion for your business?
The term to answer the first question, the term account-based marketing is a bit deceiving because it is a coordinated effort between marketing and sales, and sometimes even customer success when you're in the renewal or expansion phase. So it is the joint effort of the entire commercial team on a specific set of accounts that are predefined. They also call it the flip the funnel model, where in the more traditional model you would put campaigns out, and then at the end you would see engagement with a specific account, and you would go after them to build a relationship. And here's the other way around: you start with a set of accounts, and you create campaigns, make it very personalized in order to get conversations going with them. So that's the answer to question number one. And to question number two, how do you recognize it? Here are some of the trigger sentences and words that I look out for in the market. We are moving up market or even to enterprise selling, and we don't know how to do this. Multi-threading, right? Talking to multiple people in the decision-making unit, the buying committee. How do we do that? Our sales cycle is long and we have many touches, and we see that it takes a lot of time for them to convert. So how do we constantly get those touch points in? And another one is the annual contract value, the ACV in go-to-market methodology. If a client says, we have an ACV of 100, 200K, so 100K deal size, then if you run the objective calculations, budget and objective calculations, it's almost
Mhm.
always pans out. Anything north of 50K ACV is a good candidate for ABM, and hardly does it. It's not often the case that it doesn't check out.
Yeah. Okay, so it's how I understand it, it's the coordinated effort. I like that one between all your go-to-market teams on a specific list of accounts.
Yes.
That's the first one. And you are probably well suited for running an ABM motion, if we want to call it like this, when you are selling a bit more upmarket slash enterprise. You have a higher ACV, like the 50K plus per year
Yes.
or
Yes. Annual.
total?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
annual contract value. Yeah. The long sales cycles with multiple touches, I would put that in between brackets because that can also just mean that you run an inefficient sales motion, but that's something else. But more often than not, I would maybe say that there's like a larger buying committee involved in the buying process.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Correct. And the terminology in GTM is multi-threaded for that.
yeah.
Multiple threads of communication. In revenue architecture, the book behind you and also behind me,
Uh,
they call it a high touch GTM motion. That
yeah,
is the terminology for
high touch,
GTM mode.
dedicated touch. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah.
Um, okay, so there are multiple angles in which we can then look at this. So first of all, like the recognition of is this the right motion for me? Well, we basically covered that.
Yeah.
Then the next step would be like, okay, how do we even get this started? And if we already do this, like, are we doing it in a way that works? And then, like, hey, we use specific set of tools. How do we make sure that what we are using is actually well, um, how do you say that? Well set up to support this motion. And in your case, this is specifically like the HubSpot. Of course, there are other tools out there that you can also use when it comes to like your CRM. But yeah, let's get started on the how to get started. Like what are some of the main issues or problems that some of your clients might experience once they are saying like, hey, yeah, we should take a look at this ABM thing. Um, but what now?
Yeah. Um, Account-based marketing has one of the longest executional processes that I have seen during my 10-year career in B2B marketing and sales. There are many steps, and they're often skipped or not done in the right order. And it all starts with developing a suitable strategy, um, but more importantly, aligning on the expectations within the company and upwards towards your stakeholders. Because in general, the idea is, we get this ABM thing going, and because we're targeting accounts now, after 3 months, we will have loads of opportunities in the pipeline. Because that's what ABM does, doesn't it? And when an organization runs ABM for the first time, it's very important. What I always say to the CEO is, this can be a silver bullet, if you will, but it will be in 1 to 2 years. The first 3 to 6 months, you will be learning a lot, and you might get some deals in the pipe. But it's the first 3 to 6 months are for your team to really learn, how do we do this? How do we develop a strategy? How do we implement it in HubSpot? And how do we report it, or another CRM? And how do we report it
Hmm.
properly to you? That learning process is always, you go through that. And then in the next 6 to 12 months is when the results really start to come in, because you've done it once and you can expand on that. So all the way until your most important stakeholder is communicate that from the beginning.
Who would you then involve in this? Because you said it's like a coordinated effort between the go-to-market teams
Yeah.
to make sure that the alignment, because as I understand it right now, that's like could be an issue if it's not well aligned. Who would you bring into this process to make sure that we're going in, like we're all going towards the same goal,
Yeah.
interesting direction.
Yeah, that's a great question. Interesting for many organizations. If you look at a bit of a bigger B2B SaaS company, for instance, and scale up, they usually have a CMO. And the CMO is the owner of all marketing programs. And account-based marketing is considered one. The CMO either cross-communicates to the CCO and they go up to the CEO together, or to the chief revenue officer if they're big enough, or sometimes it's directly to the CEO. Then the most important person to do ABM successfully is the ABM lead. So someone who develops that strategy, owns the KPIs, and drives the program forward, all the way from campaign execution, coordinating with sales, getting the reporting up, and helping the CMO or the head of marketing report to their stakeholder. So the ABM lead is very important.
Who would be your suggestion for an ABM lead? Would this be someone like you, for example, coming externally setting it up, or would like an internal person like with a specific role or function be best suited
Yes,
for this?
ideally the ABM lead is in-house, and if you have a senior growth marketer, a senior growth marketing manager, that is usually the person that is most suitable for this role. If they lack the seniority or simply the expertise to execute, then it's a good idea to work with an ABM coach. That is one of my main services. I coach ABM leads at clients to do it properly the first way around, and also help them with reporting to the CMO or the other stakeholders. If such a person doesn't exist, then you can source a fractional ABM lead. And that
Hmm.
also sometimes that's what I do. I recently started collaborating with a client as a fractional ABM lead. So then 2-3 months, I'm in charge of the program. We assign an ABM lead in-house. We always go for that route. You want to own this internally. And then we put that person forward and flip it around. And then I become the coach. And then that person starts leading it. So it depends a bit on how ready they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it starts with the alignment and the strategy,
Yes.
and then you go into like this learning process on like, okay, so we have the ABM lead, preferably like a senior growth marketer. It makes the most sense according to you to have this person running the ABM um, process,
Yeah.
or at least like own it.
Yeah.
I think that's the better word,
Hmm.
because that doesn't mean that they have to do it,
No.
but own it. What what could be some of like the misconceptions when it comes to like this very early phase of setting up your ABM motion?
Yeah, misconception number one, we already talked about that this is a silver bullet that will fly out of your gun, and after 3 months, heaps of leads, and pipeline, and revenue come in. You can get first results in, but this takes time to accumulate. Also, with the longer sales cycle length, which is the nature of companies that do ABM. So that's one. Number two is that you need a big tech stack, expensive ABM software, 6 cents to do very personalized advertisements and targeting across channels. No, don't do that. Start small. You usually, as a SaaS company, you have a CRM, you have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Use one or two plugins to connect those two platforms, and maybe work with some outreach tools, but keep it very minimal. I would say a CRM, Sales Navigator, and a way to sync between them. That should be your top three technology, and you can do ABM very properly with that already.
Yeah, if you know who to target
Yeah,
and how you can get in contact with them, but
yeah,
that's
yeah,
I think very important. Um, I can also imagine, because of the name, that some might think that it's just like a marketing thing.
yeah.
Um, in your like definition, it's already like stated like it's across
Mhm.
the different departments. But is this something that you hear? I can only imagine that, to be honest.
Yes, in some organizations, sales, because it's called account-based marketing, they think our marketing is just going to send us a bunch of highly qualified leads, and all we got to do is submit 20 target accounts we want to go after, and then the rest will magically follow. It's not about coming from bad intentions. It's just because also of the name. And we, the community, has tried to rename it ABX, account-based experience, account-based selling. Usually the first the coin term stays, so it's just called ABM. We have to deal with that. But that's what I do, and I advise any company to do in the beginning. Make it very clear what everyone's responsibility is. So I start with an ABM team analysis. All of the required roles in an ABM team. So ABM lead, growth marketer, HubSpot CRM specialist, and then on the sales side, account executive, and preferably an SDR or a BDR. And especially with the sales team, we're going to say, look, guys, we're going to do this together. We are going to define our ICP, ideal client profile, together. We're going to find accounts with intent that match that profile together. That target account list, the SDRs, you guys will put stuff from Sales Navigator into HubSpot, get the intent data in. And then I show it in practice. What does it look like? And then they understand, oh, wow, we're really going to, this is us doing it together as a team. We will have weekly ABM meetings, pipeline review, account list review. And that's when it starts to sink in like, oh, this is actually also good on the alignment side.
For me, like ABM makes a lot of sense, right? Like you go focus on a very specific list of accounts. You know your own value proposition. You know why they should work with
Yeah.
you. Doesn't mean that they will,
Mhm.
but you should know why. And then you look for certain signals or things that are happening, which makes it more relevant at that moment in time to get in contact with you. You try to multi-thread across the organization, different levels, understand what's happening, and base your proposition or what you can provide to them. Um, but for me, it's very difficult to understand what certain problems might exist in a business where ABM can be the solution for, because you said it, like it may, when you have like these certain criterias, like deal size, etc., then it makes sense to use it. But what are companies experiencing if they don't use ABM, but they do fit those criterias, basically?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one for sure. So some of them are still stuck on the lead gen models, gating a lot of content, generating an MQL and sending that to sales saying, hey, follow up. And that model has never worked super well. But by the lack of a better model, we've used it for many years in B2B. So then they start looking for another way for marketing needs to generate pipeline. That is the responsibility of a good marketing team. And lead gen is not bringing enough of it. So then they start looking at ABM as a possible solution. Another one is that enterprise selling. If the sales cycle is longer, there's many touches and many people involved in that buying committee. How do you orchestrate that emotion like that? How do you bring all of that data together? How will you know who's in that company? How do you know who reports to who? Where do they hang out? How do you reach them? I think get that data in your CRM so that you can also update each other on it. It's like the enterprise selling is hard, and you need to connect all the dots. And if you don't, then your competitor will probably. So
Yeah, if I would play like devil's advocate, then I can also say then, hey, if I just have like a bunch of SDRs, like we call into like the large enterprises
yeah,
and basically book meetings for my AEs
yeah,
or my other sales guys,
yeah.
and having like this entire like ABM thing, which is a thing, just cause
Mhm.
like, we wouldn't need to invest in this. Like, why would I bring Wouter to my business if I just have like a sales
Yeah,
team whose job it is to like penetrate those
yeah,
companies?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I just had this recent example at a SaaS client where SDRs were calling customers. So, the big advantage of ABM is you build a target account list and you go through it with the sales team. And then they say, hey, but there are 3 customers on there. Without that exercise, they would have just called them. And this is what happened. Like integrations with big tools are being stopped because SDRs are calling customers. It's also when you want to do more enterprise selling, you hire more SDRs, but it's really hard to scale with headcount. This is something we see across the board. Jacco van der Kooi was also at SaaS Summit giving a talk, and he says it's really hard to scale exponentially just by adding more people from the same role. And what you want to do is with your resources get a better ROI. And ABM as a high touch motion is you can improve your conversion rate dramatically. You can increase your win rates, SQL to opportunity. So what you're prospecting into with discoveries that end up in the pipe, those key conversion rates you can improve dramatically with this targeted approach, and also because you're doing everything properly in the CRM. So that if you want to, if you're on 5 million or 10 million and you want to grow to 20 million, adding a bunch of SDRs, adding more headcount will make it very hard. But there's a lot of revenue to be gained on the expansion side if you're above 5 million in Europe. Like this is also what revenue architecture explains. More and more moves to the expansion side, getting more revenue from the same customers. And you can also use ABM for that, not just for new logos and new business. So yeah, especially for companies in the scale up phase that move into enterprise, this is what you want to look into for these reasons.
Yeah. I think there's again, it comes back to like, who is this best suited for, right? Going up market into enterprise, you have higher deal values that you're working with, making sure that the way that you're trying to penetrate the accounts is very focused. It just makes sense. And the expansion part, it's funny. Like, I recently heard about the term customer marketing, which was basically, instead of like the demand gen lead generation on the top of funnel, it was more focused on actually targeting your existing customers with like upsell
Yeah.
or expansion opportunities based on product usage,
Yeah.
adoption, stuff like that. I think it was very, very
Mhm.
interesting way to look at generating revenue.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is this account based motion different than like your lower touch motion, for example, where you just have like the classic SDR books a meeting, the AE runs the discovery, does a demo, sends a proposal, and it's either like a little bit of negotiation or it's won or lost. How is this different from a very well organized lower touch model, um, yeah, compared to like the really like an account based model?
Yeah. It's the the investment into the account. So the higher up you go, ACV wise, the more you can invest in an account. So for instance, what we do, let's say we have identified 50 or 60 target accounts for an ABM campaign. And we also from that list create a top 10 or top 15. And these accounts are the ones where you have the highest chance of closing because of product market fit, because of intent data, and because just from a business perspective, they are a good fit. So what you would do there, for instance, is create an account plan per account. You would make sure that you know everyone in the buying committee, create an organogram, for instance, in HubSpot, determining the hierarchy with the whole
Mhm.
team, develop a way that you're going to work that account. Account executive, you have a connection with the champion. Go reach out to them by phone and send them a personal parcel and to get attention. Hey, our CEO knows the CEO there. Let's use that connection. So you really prospect into the account on an individual level, and you develop an account plan. How are we going to get in touch on with the multi-touch, multi-threaded, multiple people in that account. So that you would never do that with a lower touch. Also because the investment will not
No.
be justified by the reward.
Yeah, I think like the ROI thing
Mhm.
is a big
Mhm.
one. Like it makes sense when you're able to spend more on like generating revenue within those accounts. This is again what you said, like it comes back to like what's the ACV basically, and how much do you need to like multi-thread into a account. Um, so for me, how I process the information that you're giving, like, hey, if we are identifying, for example, that our sales cycle length is increasing in like a specific set of accounts, more like probably the upmarket and the enterprise accounts. We see that our acquisition costs might go up in those same set of accounts, and we are basically unable to drive the conversions that we would like to see, the amount of conversations, touches, basically that we have with
Yeah.
them. That for me would be like an identifier, like, hey, like based on our own situation and the results that we're getting and the lack of results, probably, that's when we might need to consider, or that's when you should consider, like really invest in like this account based motion. And then it starts with like bringing the team together, like you said, the analysis of the roles. Then we're starting with like, hey, we're looking into this alignment strategy, and then we're heading into this learning process. I'm I'm looking for like the process. So maybe can you maybe take us through the different steps that you would go through, and then let's stop at each step and dive a little bit deeper into this, because I think that's where I would at least find it most interesting, because maybe it becomes a bit more practical
Yeah. Yeah.
going through this.
Absolutely. I know them by heart. So it
That's good.
be weird if I didn't, but it's actually
Step one.
the process is, if you look at the checklist, like remember that from the top of your head, you need to do it a lot. Um, so step number one is to determine your objectives. And those can be comprised from multiple angles. It's either the company says, hey, we have X revenue target. We expect marketing to deliver X amount of pipeline or revenue. And um, uh, let's make this percentage come from ABM. So then you have your target there. Or you do it the other way around. You know that ABM is a good fit based on the criteria we discussed. And you make a budget calculation. So you look at internal people on the payroll, the external people you would need, right? So you do that team analysis, which team members do we need? That collection of members produces a total number. You do an estimation of advertising spend and other content creation, and that gives you a total ABM budget. And then you look at your ACV, you look at the gross margin of your product, and you calculate the amount of deals or the amount of revenue you would need to at least break even, preferably get into profit the first time. And that's the first step, the objective budget and calculation and objective setting. And then based off of those calculations, you start with a strategy. And the strategy is, okay, how are we going to get to that number? Well, we have an ICP. A tier one ICP brings in this amount of annual revenue, the ACV. And then in the ICP, you determine, okay, so tier one, B2B SaaS scale ups, 5 million plus 50 employees in the Nordic region. That's my ICP. Then within that ICP, you determine who are all the people in the buying committee that I'm going to be talking to at some point. And then depending on those people, you start to conduct interviews with existing clients to learn about why did they buy, what was the problem they were facing, etc. You know, those kinds of questions that
Mhm.
your specialty, of course, also. Um, you know that better than I do. And then with the output of those interviews, that's what you use to develop your campaign plan. So, okay, so we heard from 20 of those 50 accounts that they struggled with X, Y, and Z during the research process. Let's create educational, interactive content around that. For instance, a webinar, a virtual event where we can put people together, prospects and clients, and learn from each other. and invite all of the accounts, on a more personal basis. So this is a, a high speed walkthrough, but that is in essence, those are the key steps. And there are many things you can do to make the quality of the outcome better, like a lot of detailed
Mhm.
sub steps. We can go into those. It will make it a lengthy episode, I think. It's very concrete and practical. So I can name one or two best practices, for instance, if you want.
Yeah, that would be very good. For me, once you said like, hey, you interview your current clients, like, love it. Um, and then see like, hey, what were like specific things that they were experiencing at a specific moment in time,
Yes.
that made them basically look for like a solution like yours.
Yeah.
Then translate that into, for example, like educational content, and then that is something that is really like smart. Just even for your other motions that you
Mhm.
might run as well, like educating your buyer or your potential buyer based on problems that they might experience or will experience in the near future. That's smart. It's like you said, for like the category entry points is, I believe, then what the name is. So that once like a specific thing happens, that the association is with your brand. Uh, that's a very, very strong indicator of a successful business, or at least a strong brand.
Yeah.
I should say.
Yeah.
Um, okay, but then hey, we have the strategy, basically like the how. You said like the ICP tier one. Um, how would we define our tier one ICP? I think that is something that can be very interesting.
The amount of revenue you can make on them is usually the most determining factor. So for me, my tier one, I look into accounts that can spend 5K a month for the next 3 to 6 months at least. Right. So, and that's what I do with my clients as well. Yeah, this is a great fit for our company. Okay. Well, what is our ACV ideally? Yeah, it's 100K. How much do you think you can sell to this account? Yeah, maybe 25. Okay. So probably not the first one you want to go after, right? No, not really. And this one, yeah, we can sell 120 there. Okay, so that makes more sense to tag them as a tier one. So really the amount of revenue you can do, and the amount of revenue you can do is quite often, almost always, closely related to the size of the company. If I go to a startup and charge 3 to 5K a month for my program, just giving it as an example from my own, yeah, that's not gonna fly. So um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very important factor.
Um, but let's say that our tier one list
Mm,
contains 500
yeah.
accounts, be 1,000. That's a lot, right?
Yes.
So how could we then prioritize the tier 1.001 accounts, basically?
Regions. So with this client that we're doing a full ABM program with currently, we have a lot of target accounts, but we have a nice cluster in the Benelux. So for our content, we're going to go Dutch. Also invite people in Dutch. So that helps. So that's just the Netherlands and Belgium. So regional clusters work really well. Um, Also, if you can define target accounts with a shared challenge, that is great. So let's say that for 20% of the total account list, we know for sure that the challenge that we solve really well is in their top three priority board.
Mhm.
That's another great one. We use disqualification criteria. For instance, if they are on a certain technology, if a client comes to me and says, "Look, I'm on Marketo or Active Campaign. Can you help me run ABM?" That's for me is disqualification.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are
Like the not just knowing who to sell to, but also who not to
yeah,
sell
yeah,
to,
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
Disqualification criteria is just as important. And intent data is will help you now narrow down significantly, right? So do we see in LinkedIn Sales Navigator that they have buyer or category intent, Albacross, Apollo, Zoom Info, whatever intent tool
Yeah.
you use?
There are many
Yeah,
different intent solutions out
yeah.
there. You have like believe like the first, second, and third party data that you can leverage. Um, not gonna dive into what that all means.
Now, and this is what
um,
when we come back to the question on the misconception, companies think they need to stack a lot of intent tools in the beginning.
yeah,
It makes it very difficult. The best intent comes from sales reps. Hey, I spoke to this person on the event. This lead is hot. Okay, that is good intent. That is the best.
yes. Uh, they scheduled the meeting with me instead of me trying to
Yeah.
schedule the meeting with them. That's also very, a very good. Um, but the strategy part, I can also imagine that like for each of the departments, it's gonna look a little bit different, right? So what are some of like the practical things that we would do for marketing, sales, and maybe let's leave out the expansion for now. Just marketing and sales. Like what would be some specific things that they need to consider or create to get started once we have defined our tier one ICP list?
Okay, so after the account list.
Yeah.
So the account list and the messaging that is developed from the interviews, that is the input for your actual campaign plan. So what are we going to do with these accounts? How are we going to educate them? And how will we get in touch afterwards, still from an educational angle, right? So that is marketing and sales sitting together and coming up with that idea. Here's an example. A client has been working a big manufacturing company for the past 2 years, and now they're finally getting close to making a big deal. So we asked, how did you get in touch with these guys? Yeah, we co-hosted an event with another partner of ours, and they were there. So sales doesn't often realize how important their input is for the campaign plan. So it is not marketing putting themselves in the back room and coming out with this amazing blueprint. No, it is marketing and sales together trying to come up, not trying, coming up with that approach. And sales knows best, usually.
You're gonna make a lot of people feel good about
Yeah,
themselves,
yeah, indeed.
myself included. I can still consider myself a little bit of a
Okay,
salesperson
yeah, yeah.
after like over a decade.
Well,
Um, I can imagine that it's when you're like in the educational space, or not in the educational industry, but like in this phase, I should say,
mm,
that we are educating them on the problem, we're educating them the solution, we're educating them maybe on how to solve this specific problem with the solution. Some practical stuff. Would you then like create white papers, ebooks, landing pages, talk tracks for sales, or like what are some of the things that you need to like actually go out there?
the keyword is interactivity. So you want to the best way is to interact with your prospects in a non-salesy way. I will give an example. This is from the guys from Full Funnel, great ABM resource. They call it the
Yep.
market research report play. So this is a long one. So for a pilot, I don't know, but some companies have done it. You reach out to top names in your industry, prospects and clients.
Hmm.
The angle is I'm doing a research and we're going to publish a report and that will give you real insights, not the typical survey. We're going to go deep and we're going to come up with
Hmm.
the top 7 findings and we're going to share it with you guys, and we'll do it in an interactive manner. So we will take the findings from the report in a roundtable webinar. We'll invite some of the same prospects and clients to go on stage and talk about the challenge and how they solved it. So
Hmm.
in the interview process, you're talking to the clients and prospects, you're talking to them around the roundtable webinar. Obviously, you need to explain what you do for them to associate themselves with you. So that's also a great way to subtly introduce your company without pitching to them. And I don't ever guarantee anything, but very high likelihood, 98% sure that after running, especially the 2-step report plus roundtable, some of them will either recommend you to another client in their network or ask directly to work with you because they've learned actually what the best way is to solve that problem, and they also learned that you can do it and you're already in the trust. because you've collaborated with them. And that is the nature of any good ABM campaign, is interactivity.
Yeah.
So long form, you can create a white paper.
Yeah, it's the report basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you added the layer of interactiveness
Yes,
through the roundtable discussion. With Pavilion, I believe they do this very cool as well with all the dinners that they're hosting within each chapter.
absolutely.
So that you just joined them.
Yeah,
So it's I can only imagine how much fun
it
it
is.
is.
It's great. It's a
Uh,
great way to introduce people to each other. And
uh, then that also then builds trust. It builds recognition, awareness. You can leverage all of that because then not only can they make a referral to a potential client, but also they can make an internal referral to somebody that might own a part of the problem or a part of the process. I like
yeah,
that one.
yeah,
I'm writing that one down for myself as well.
yeah. It almost
Yes.
always
Yeah.
works.
Okay. And then does the strategy and the execution like it overlaps a little bit for you, or is there like a specific like, oh, we are doing or setting up the objectives, we're doing our research, and we are defining our strategy and like how, where, what, why, basically. And then the execution phase is that next. That makes sense to me, basically.
Yeah, yeah. The end of the strategy phase is defined by a campaign plan that has been approved by everyone. And the campaign plan
And then
is what we just discussed.
yeah, and then we go into the execution. Where do you see like the biggest learnings? Because you said like, hey, in the beginning it's the learning process. Like, what are some of the most typical learnings in the like the first executions that you're doing?
How damn hard it is to build a good target account list, clean data. Whenever I start with a client or advise someone in general, I say, look, the target account list is gonna be a beep. And that's gonna be, prepare yourself for that. It's not gonna be fun. It will teach you a lot, also about the data quality in your CRM. Be prepared to do a lot of
Mm,
manual scrapping, deduplicating, talking to sales. Is this a client? Yes or no? But once you've gone through that process, you will know how you want to have it in HubSpot the next time, and it is a great improvement. Also from a revenue up side, right? It's not just ABM. Like, how do I manage my client data? On the strategic side, before that, it really the eye opener of wow, having a focus, it changes our perspective of how we should look at a market. So working on ICPs with sales and disqualification criteria and narrowing down. They thought they've narrowed down, but now we're really doing it. Now we're looking at
yeah.
individual accounts, and that makes it very concrete, and it gives them an energy boost usually to really get started on this.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like it's a, when you're in sales and marketing, it's just fun, to like see that the efforts that you put in are actually driving results. Like we can go into a lot of stuff. We are running a bit short on time, because you have a very tight
Yeah,
schedule today.
let's go for let's do another 10 at least.
Okay, good. Because I want to ask, like, I can imagine that if your audience might not be online, for example,
Hmm.
that could be a difficulty. Or, well, we've talked that you don't need to have like a very big setup when it comes to like different tooling. But if you want to track certain intent data, like you might want to see who's visiting your website, so does it, you at least can identify like, hey, these are like the engaged accounts. I can imagine that there is like a prioritization model that you might want to use based on the engagement and intent, even within your very like narrowly defined target list. So there's certain things that I would like to go a little bit into, but let's start with how do we reach people that might not be present online, and how do, how do we get their information in, basically.
Yeah, meet them at events.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So I have this is how I do it. I know my target audience is at certain events, I then quite often you have the attendee list. I scrape it, enrich for HubSpot, and have top 10 target account list, and then look all the people, find the people who work there, put pictures next to their faces, and have conversations with them.
Bring your battle cards to the
Yeah,
event.
yeah,
Talk tracks too.
almost. I mean, I
Yeah.
know most of these people, or I know who they are. So, but it is more about meeting them at events, and then organizing something yourself in person. We already discussed that. Could be a roundtable dinner, executive dinner. Direct mail campaigns, especially in the digital era, work very well if you don't make them creepy. So keep it educational. Find them a nice book, talks about their topic, handwritten note. If you want to make it even more personal, look at their social media and include a personal gift. That one is delicate. So if you want to play it safe, just send something educational with a note. Guerrilla stuff, put stuff around their offices. I just learned this today from another guy. If you go to an event and you know that they're going to come by train, put your gorilla or digital screens around that part for some brand recognition. That's all ways to do it.
You can take it offline like the old days.
Yes, and usually a good ABM, we almost always include a physical component. Direct mail package very often is part of it, at least for the top accounts that engaged with the campaign offering, with the round table or whatever.
Okay. I like that one. Yeah, and then okay, so I want to like we discussed like the tech stack, but we're not gonna talk about that. I don't think that's very interesting for now, at least. Taking it offline, I like that one a lot. Like it makes sense. Just go to events. That's
Yeah.
how we used to do it as well. Send them something in the mail, like if you have their address from the business, you can just send something.
Yeah.
And make sure that you're making it interactive, educational, interactive. Um, and then if we basically set this all up properly and it's running and we are seeing that our conversions improve, our sales cycles are shortening for this specific like set of accounts and our ACVs are where they should be. Like, what are some of the possibilities then that become available to you once you've basically reached like certain of the objectives that you've set up in the beginning?
Yeah, phase number one is proving that this is a revenue producing strategy with a good ROI that is predictable. So if we turn on 2 ABM campaigns in 6 to 9 months, we can expect an increase in pipe with this amount roughly. So that's the first phase, is proving that it works. And the second phase is expanding on that. So that can mean adding new accounts to the same campaign, or replicating your campaign plan to another vertical, another market. Or as you start to grow, focus more on expansion, upsell campaigns. So
Yeah.
the first campaign is just to prove that ABM is working. And then there are many possibilities to scale it. And then it starts to take up a higher and higher budget, right? It's all constantly about resource allocation into different GTM strategies. Oh, we're getting a better ROI with ABM than we are on our mid market motion. So let us put more there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to unpack still. Like, I would love to have a follow-up conversation because we could touch like HubSpot way more. We can think about like, hey, what are like some of the things that you would ask your customers, and how can you translate that into like good content? If we are like analyzing the different channels that we might want to leverage, like how can we create like the strategies and tactics for each of the channels? And we're talking to different people in the organization. So what are like some of the talk tracks that we might want to start with each of the different people within the organization that we need to like engage with? So there's so much
Yes.
more to unpack. Um, like I said, like time. doesn't really allow it for today. So we'll we'll stay in touch. We'll go perhaps a little bit deeper in a different on a different moment, because I believe that this is the way that you should actually just run your go to market, right? It not just when you have a very high touch um, like sales cycle basically, but you can take a lot of the learnings from like a very well set up ABM motion and translate them into
Yeah,
maybe more like your self-serve or lower touch motion.
yeah, yeah,
It just makes a lot of sense.
yeah. I recently heard account-based operations, and yeah, and we have so much terminology already. But the explanation behind it is you don't always have to go full-blown ABM, but we can learn a lot from the ABM process in terms of target account list, prioritizing ICP, getting the buying roles in the buying committee in your CRM, syncing between Sales Navigator and your CRM. These are all things that are mandatory actions
Yeah,
in ABM, and they will do you good across all of your motions. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So there are many, that's what I
yeah,
said, like a lot of learnings, a lot of waterfall
yeah,
effects with
yeah,
if you hear about this.
yeah, yeah, and I can make it very
Um,
practical. So in a follow-up session, absolutely.
Awesome. Then we'll make it practical. I like that one. We're going to provide like some actionable insights people might be able to use, maybe some of the frameworks that you use yourself.
Nice
A
cliffhanger
lot of
is also in the book behind us. I recently
yeah,
did a post on Sunday on how to use spiced criteria: situation, pain, impact, critical event, and then decision, mapping it to ABM, using it to really develop your ICP buying committee, even on the persona level, understand
yeah,
exactly what they are facing. When I did this exercise, literally from the book, and then I posted about it on LinkedIn, it really helped me realize that you can do a deeper drill down to really understand this customer. When will they buy from you? So that would be one great example to cover in more detail in the next one. It has helped me
I know.
tremendously.
Yeah, I like them. Spiced example. So to close things off for today, Wouter, at the end of each interview, I ask the other person two questions. If you can go back 4 years to when you just started out for yourself, like what would you tell younger Wouter to one, keep on doing and stop doing immediately? What advice would you give your younger self?
Keep on doing, starting small and scrappy. My first ABM campaign, we just selected 6 target accounts, put them in Excel, wrote a 2-pager, and reached out directly to the CEO, booked a meeting, and got the deal after 6 months. Hey, we just
Okay.
bothered enough to put them in HubSpot. So
Mhm.
start small is the way to go, and niching down. So I was doing a lot of CRM work also in the beginning. Um, it's super important to do CRM, and it goes hand in
Mhm.
hand with ABM, but work best of breed, like find a person who's absolute best at what they do, revenue operations, and work with them and tell them what you need instead of figuring that part out yourself as well.
I like that one. Start small and scrappy and be focused on what you do
Yeah.
best. I think that is a very good closing for today. So, if people want to find you, I'm going to make sure that your LinkedIn, your website, and everything is in the show notes.
Okay.
If you guys are interested in the follow up that we're going to do, like definitely let us know. And maybe if you have some ideas or questions about ABM and how to use this in HubSpot, we may be even able to tackle this as well. So for now, thank you all so much for listening. Wouter, thank you for sharing your story and talk soon.
Yeah, it was great doing this. Very fun and practical. I love it.
Thanks. All right, everybody. Bye bye.